What's up guys, welcome to Voicey here. This is your host, Captain Zach, and today's subreddit is r/TalesOfNeckbeards. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to never miss an episode. This story is called Prejudiced Neckbeard is Fired for Fraud. No one is sad or surprised. I work for a call center, though this didn't really take place on the phones, so I'm not sure it belongs in r/Tales from Call Centers, but it definitely fits here. I started working for this company late last year, after a very anxious job search. My previous employer got screwed by the company who contracted us, and we were given 2 weeks before my job disappeared. During those 2 weeks, my hours had been cut in half, and had I not found this job when I did, I would have been forced to rehome my cat and move in with my boyfriend, his dad, who is allergic to cats, and his dad's girlfriend, who made my evil ex-stepmother look tame. The latter two are both heavy smokers, to which I am sensitive, so this job was truly a godsend. Unfortunately, as I do not have a car, I had to pay for Lyft to get to and from work, which cost me way too much money. I was very fortunate to find a friend during training who was willing to give me rides home for only $5 a trip. After mentioning this to one of my drivers, they offered to drive me to work for the same amount. Enter the Neckbeard, who I will be shortening to Neckbeard. During my second week of training, I was talking to one of my friends from class, and Neckbeard overheard me mention my ride situation.
Hey, if you need a ride home, I could take you.
Really? Thanks. Mind if we stop by the store so I can get a little more cash? I can give you $5 then.
I'll take you, but don't worry about paying me. I'll drive you for free.
Wow, thank you. That would be a huge help with how much it's been costing me. I won't lie, I was really hoping I would find someone I could carpool with, and it seemed my prayers had been answered. Good Lord, was I wrong. While things did go fine for the first few days, I found out just what kind of guy he is that Friday. I had pre-ordered a Nintendo Switch Lite several months ago, non-refundable, I tried, and asked Neckbeard if we could stop by GameStore to pick it up. He said yes, and while I can't remember the entire conversation, I will never forget what he said about transgender people. Warning, the next few sentences contain phrases which are very offensive to LGBTQ+ communities. Such phrases are his words, not mine, and I do not agree with anything he said.
These people who say they are one gender but are actually another are such sinners.
You know, those people don't choose to be that way. If they had the choice, it would be to feel comfortable in their own skin.
Nonsense. If you're born with a schlong, then you are a man. They are ungodly, and they are going to hell.
The Bible clearly states that it is not our place to judge others on that. It also says that God wants us to choose to follow Him, not force our beliefs on others.
The Bible clearly states that they are sinners and that God hates them.
I stopped talking to him after that. I hate when ignorant, entitled Christians pick and choose which part of the Bible they want to follow to fit their own prejudices. I am a Christian as well, but I live by God's commandments, not the words written by imperfect people who are just as capable of being swayed by the devil as anyone else. God's message is one of love, and as such, I refuse to allow hatred into my life. I don't even wish for Trump to be harmed. Impeached, yes, but I will never wish for him to be killed. If God doesn't make mistakes, then isn't it entirely possible that he made these people this way on purpose too? He tests us every day after all. My best friend is also gay, and he is the sweetest of cinnamon rolls. I love him like a little brother, and you do not want to see me when I am protecting someone I care about. If you are transphobic because of your religion, chances are that you are homophobic as well. I refuse to believe that someone like him, who wouldn't even hurt a fly, will go anywhere other than heaven. I was so disgusted that I stopped talking to him completely at work. I did tell him that I wasn't going to talk to him anymore, but the only reason I gave him was that we had different morals, but not before another incident where he really pissed me off. I had made another friend at work who was able to give me free rides to work, but since he got there several hours before me, I had about 2 hours to kill in the break room before clocking in. I brought my new Switch Lite and was playing Pokken Tournament while waiting for the time. That's when he came in and just did not care that I had headphones on. He kept talking and talking and talking and just did not get the hint. I was glad that I could use my game as an excuse and turn the volume all the way up so I could pretend I couldn't hear him and was too focused on not dying. He eventually walked away in a huff, and afterwards I got advice on what to tell him. Whoo, boy did he not like that. Now, I'm a friendly person, so if I see someone walk into the room, I will instinctively smile at them. If it was him, I dropped my smile and looked away.
Oh, are you finally gonna talk to me today?
I ignored him. I found out one of my new coworkers was a staff member at our local anime convention, and since we were already friends, we started hanging out in the break room. It didn't hurt that she also got rides from the same person, though our schedules were different. She told me that Neckbeard was a jerk to other people as well, and I found out he was also a misogynist. He would say gross things about women in the break room, but in such a way that you had to be paying attention to know just how gross they were. There was one girl who left our department because Neckbeard kept going over to her and giving her unsolicited hugs from behind. She already didn't like being touched, especially without consent, but what made it worse was that he would place his hands on her boobs when doing so. He had, of course, been reported, but since he brought in a lot of sales, there was nothing they wanted to do about it. I also heard from my friend that Neckbeard had been bragging about how he had essentially been committing fraud to get his numbers up. Basically, we make reservations in our department, and if someone needs more than 7, then you are supposed to transfer them to group sales. His way around this was to make 7 reservations for them and then transfer them. This was a secret to no one, but I guess our team leads couldn't do anything since they had not found any evidence to prove it yet. I eventually switched from sales to complaints, and I was glad that my new schedule did not coincide with him as much anymore. Unfortunately, I still had to see him, and he was still making those passive-aggressive remarks about how I refused to talk to him. One day, I was talking to a work friend on lunch, and Neckbeard inserted himself into our conversation. I tried to ignore him, but he kept butting in. I eventually walked away, and I heard him tell her,
"Yeah, she doesn't talk to me."
I don't know what he said after that, but I was livid. I never gossiped about him with anyone who didn't already know what he was like. Even then, we never said his name, but people would be able to guess who he was right away. That said, there were still some people who didn't know what he was like. So, for him to go around telling people that just makes me look like the bad guy. I finally had enough and told him exactly why I didn't talk to him. He, of course, retaliated by repeating all the transphobic nonsense from before, and I reported him. I couldn't report him before because he said those things off property, but this was the break room. Prejudice on work property was strictly forbidden, so I had the right to do so. A few days later, he was seen being walked out of the building by security. Apparently, they had finally found a call that proved he was committing fraud. But I can't help this sneaking suspicion that I helped at least a little. Update! After posting this, I heard from one of my coworkers that Neckbeard had threatened HR when asked about my report. So yes, my case had in fact been the straw that broke the camel's back, and him threatening HR with violence only added to the already dead camel. Why do people get so worked up about people just doing their own thing? Like, what prompted him to be like,
"Oh my god, transgenders, man. They're so gross, man."
That's just so stupid. Like, why are you obsessing over people just living their life how they want? You don't even have to agree with it, okay? They're people. They're exercising their freedom to do as they please with themselves. Because that is the American way. And if you want to infringe their rights to live as they wish to live, then you, sir, are a dirty communist bastard. This story's called Tekken Neckbeard. Warning, long-ass story ahead. Hello, I saw the stories on this Reddit and realized that I have a story of a Neckbeard I met. It was honestly really strange since I never saw him as a Neckbeard until I ended my friendship with him. Here's the cast. Me, a woman who is working on her social skills, and
Tech, a Neckbeard who has no filter.
So this story takes place around last year in September. I was upgrading my math in order to finally finish and get my high school diploma. The school that I went to for it accepts any students for free as long as you're below 21. We only paid for the textbooks and bus passes, etc. Anyway, this story begins when I was getting to know my classmates. I started talking to my classmates because I highly regretted not socializing with my peers in the past. So I decided to work on myself and gain myself some new friends. It was at least 2 weeks in the semester and I got pretty familiar with certain people there. All of them were interesting, except for this guy. He was interesting in a bad way. We'll call him Tech, shortened from Tekken, the thing he loves the most. Tech didn't look like a typical Neckbeard. He was small, just a few inches taller than me. I'm 5'1". He's not overweight, he was rather thin, always wore big clothes, sometimes anime merch, and has black glasses. His hair was shoulder length, never tied, always looked greasy, and he has this thick, full beard. There was always this certain smell that oozed off of him, and it was horrible. Also, I can never forget how his eyes never seemed to blink when you talked to him. So at some point, my teacher asked me to sit by his group just for one lesson. I was eager because this just meant possible new friendships. I approached their table, and I already had knowledge that they were the sort of nerdy type of people. I overheard them talk about Call of Duty and anime before, so I wasn't all too worried about conversation topics. When I took a seat, I introduced myself to the table, got a few laughs, and started working on our math. Eventually, the topic of anime entered the table, and that's when I mentioned casually that I used to be quite a fan of it until I just grew out of it. Then Tech says something like,
Not me. I'll stay a weeb forever.
which was cool, alright, you do you kind of thing, but he decided to add something along the lines of,
Especially hentai. Hentai's great.
He went off about hentai and how he watches it all the time, saying how sexy and cute the anime girls are. Being unsettled by it, I decided to change the topic by asking him about the background picture on his phone. It was just in front of us, would turn on once in a while for notifications. For a while, he talked about his passion for the game, then gradually started going off about how hot the girls were in Tekken. I jokingly agreed, which was a mistake, with him, but he started to talk seriously about how big their tits are. The topic changed and we started talking about how we get to school. I mentioned the area I lived in and what buses I use. Turns out he lives in the same area and uses the same buses. He continues with,
I see you on the buses all the time, but you don't see me.
and it gave me the biggest freaking chills. I always brushed off the way we met as a bad first impression. We've all been there, so I tried not to make judgment on it and let it go. Eventually, we started going to the buses together. Every time I spent time with him, it was always an upsetting experience in different ways. He never stops talking about Tekken. It's as if he lives for it. When he talks about his Twitch streaming, it's about Tekken. What he does after school, Tekken. Where he talks to people, in Tekken Amino. I always try to ask him what other hobbies he had, and he doesn't really have an answer. I suggest him a few things he might like, and he doesn't really care for them. It was sad whenever we talk about what we do for the weekend, and he'd always answer with,
Play Tekken all the day.
I forgot to mention, he has a very big ego. I always assumed it was because of Tekken, especially Twitch streaming, assuming he was telling the truth and he has hundreds of people watching him, and how he believes he's good enough to be a pro player for tournaments. It extends to the people in the Amino chat, how every single guy or girl wanted him, he's pansexual, to be with him and always complains like,
Opie, I have another guy in Amino that wants me. They're so thirsty,
He'd also brag about how he watches hentai out loud in the hallways at some points, even when a teacher passes by. I'm not sure if this is true or not. He'd rank the teachers on a rate of which one he'd love, and the rest of my classmates and I were really disgusted. Hell, the guys in his math group also think he's weird and needs to tone it down. When I introduced him to a friend of mine, she works in a shop that's on our way to school, he immediately asked me if I could hook them up with him, which I proceeded to say no. When I said that, he assumed I was getting competitive when really that's a friend of mine and I don't feel comfortable doing that to her, especially with what he's shown me. One day in class, we started talking about dating and eventually talked about the LGBT bar. One of my friends mentioned that I should visit it and it's just underneath our school. That's where he chimes in to say, with confidence,
I could probably get a twink. I have the moves.
Everyone freaking lost their crap and refused to believe what he said. It eventually led to a bet to see if by the end of the week he gets a date to prove he has smooth moves. During the bet, I felt really bad because everyone kept comparing him to me and saying how he could never be like me. None of them really know how I started similar to him, having so many problems socializing, and I couldn't handle the fact that they think he can't improve himself when I've been through it myself. So I gave him advice whenever I could and told him to prove them wrong that he is better than they depict him to be. I told him I rooted for him and tried to encourage him every day. In the end, he always brushed my advice aside, saying,
I know, over and over again.
He ended up losing the bet and everyone expected it. Then, eventually, I had enough of him. It happened when we were going home together. At this point, I was used to his antics of nothing but Tekken, wanting to be with someone, wanting to have sex, etc. I haven't given up on trying to help him get out of it, but I was on the edge. We took the train home together to give him a new experience and to show him another way to get to school. After we left the train station and went on the bus, he started talking about making plans with the rest of our classmates. I didn't want to make plans with him. It's mean to say, but I felt really tired every time I hung out with him, as nothing really happens and he talks about the same thing. So I told him that I'll probably be busy working out. I told him about a gym that I go to. He showed interest in working out before, so when he said that he can work out with me, I wasn't surprised. I told him he can't because it's a women's gym.
Okay, then I'll just go to the other gyms around it.
There are no other gyms around it.
I'll wait for you to finish outside then.
What the hell? I got really pissed when he just said it without thinking. I blurted out, don't you know why some of us women want to work out in a women's gym? One of the reasons is because of people like that. He kept going and practically ignored my statement.
I could also cross-dress and get in if you want.
After that, I couldn't take it anymore. I said, that's how you freaking get arrested, and went silent for the rest of the bus ride. The way he didn't seem to have any clue, laughing it off why these kinds of gyms exist, irked me. I texted him through Instagram about ending our friendship and how I hope that he can understand the weight of the things he says, saying something along the lines of how I hope he learns from this. I wished him the best and nothing happened between us after that, thank God. Sorry if it's so long, but I hope at least some of you enjoyed it. Okay, I really like this subreddit. Man, it's weird that these people are real. It's just so bizarre.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to never miss an episode.